every soul. Family ties tangle, spaghetti in a maze. Growing up in this world of non-stop craze. Through Wonderland's gates we unlock the scene. Heartfelt confessions mixed with caffeine. Identity a mirror, emotions on the grind. Relationships weave webs tangled in the mind. Dad had a dad joke, mom had a battle cry. Bro screaming GTA, sister waving goodbye. Chaos at the dinner table, feelings hit the wall. Trying to grow tall, but the ceiling's way too small. Through Wonderland's gates we unlock the scene. Heartfelt confessions mixed with caffeine. Identity a mirror, emotions on the grind. Relationships weave webs tangled in the mind.
Welcome back to Wonderland Unlocked, where the curious, the brave, and the beautifully misunderstood come to feel seen. I'm your host, and today we're curling up with the Dormouse, a creature who speaks softly, often interrupted, and tends to doze off just when things get interesting. But today, the Dormouse stays awake, because we need to talk about being ignored by the very people we hoped would hear us the loudest, our families. This episode is called Dormouse Dreams, when family ignores what you're really saying, and we'll be exploring emotional invalidation, selective listening, and the aching silence that follows when we speak from the heart, and no one seems to hear it. Take a breath, get cozy, and let's begin. Let's talk about what I call the Dormouse effect, when your voice is so routinely ignored or minimized that you begin to believe it's not worth using. Let me share a story. And there was a time when I opened up to a family member about my mental health. I had just started learning what borderline personality disorder really meant for me. I wasn't looking for pity. I was trying to name something real. To say, hey, this is why I struggle sometimes. This is what's happening inside of me. And their response? Well, maybe if you stopped being so dramatic all the time, people wouldn't react the way they do. Then came the follow-up. You're not sick. You're just choosing to act this way. That landed like a slap in the face I couldn't brace for. I remember the exact temperature of the room, the sound of my own breath catching in my throat. I stood there, holding all of this vulnerability, trying to name something, and they turned it into a character flaw. As if mental illness was just a bad personality choice I refused to fix. That moment rewired me. I started to wonder, am I just broken? Am I making this up? Should I just hide it all? I stopped sharing. I stopped explaining. I shrank back into silence, not because I wanted to, but because it felt safer than being dismissed again. And that's what emotional invalidation does. It makes you doubt the reality of your own experience. It teaches you that speaking up just opens the door to shame. Can you think of a time when you tried to explain something to your family and they just brushed it off? What did they say? How did it make you feel? Did it make you go quiet like the Dormouse? In Alice in Wonderland, the Dormouse is always being interrupted, ignored, and eventually stuffed into a teapot to shut him up. That's what selective listening feels like. Like the people who should know us best only want to hear the versions of us they find convenient. Not the full, complex, hurting human sitting right in front of them. We learn to whisper. We learn to dream silently. We tuck away our truth because we think maybe the silence is easier. But today, we wake the Dormouse because your voice still matters. Especially when it's shaky. Especially when it's being ignored. Especially when it carries the weight of something real. Let's go deeper. What happens when you stop being heard altogether? When every time you open your mouth, it feels like your words dissolve before they even land. When the people who are supposed to know and love you the most only accept a version of you that doesn't make them uncomfortable. That's when you find yourself in the teapot trap. Dormouse didn't climb into the teapot by choice. He was put there. Gently, quietly, stuffed inside with a smile and a shh. That's what happens in families like this. They smile while silencing you. They keep the lid on tightly and call it love. Let's unpack what it really feels like to live in that space. There's a version of you that your family tolerates. the light, easygoing one, the quote, okay, you. The quote, not bringing anything heavy to the table, you. So what do? You mask, you nod even when you disagree. You laugh even when the joke stings. You pretend you're not bothered even though you're hurting inside. Because rocking the boat means getting blamed for the waves. I remember during one holiday, I tried just once to voice how overwhelmed I was. I was dealing with anxiety, barely holding myself together. I quietly said, hey, I think I need to step away for a bit. This is a lot right now. And someone responded with, oh, here we go again. Why do you always have to make things about you? So I didn't step away. I stayed. I smiled and I masked. I choked on the tea in that metaphorical teapot because it seemed safer than being seen as the problem. But here's the truth. Peace that costs your voice isn't peace. It's quiet oppression. Another thing that keeps the lid on tight, gaslighting. You bring up something hurtful and suddenly it never happened, or it didn't happen like that, or you're remembering it wrong. Ever hear these? You were just a kid. It couldn't have been that bad. You always twist things to make us look like the bad guys. Stop living in the past. In Wonderland, things shift constantly. Logic doesn't apply. That's what it feels like to grow up in a family that distorts the past. You try to hold on to what happened, but the narrative keeps slipping through your fingers like a tea through cracked cup. You begin to question your own memory, your own pain. You start to believe that maybe your discomfort is the real issue, not the thing that caused it. But you're not wrong. You're not making it up. Your pain is real, even if they won't honor it. In families that don't want to face their own dysfunction, someone always ends up being the problem. That's often the truth teller, the emotionally honest one, the person who names what others are trying to bury. And guess what? That person usually becomes a scapegoat. You're too sensitive. Why do you always ruin family time? You're always causing drama. Or maybe you're not the scapegoat. Maybe you're the invisible one. The one who's never asked how they're doing. The one who's contacted when someone else needs something. The one who quietly disappears from the room and no one even notices. That's another kind of pain. The one that says, you don't matter here unless you're playing the role we assigned you. Let's name some of the most common phrases families use to keep you small. We don't talk about that. Why bring that up now? You're just being dramatic again. You always have to ruin everything. You never let things go. Do you hear the pattern? It's not about what you said. It's about the fact that you said anything at all. In the teapot trap, silence is rewarded. Speaking is punished. But you can't heal in silence, and you can't grow in a place that's determined to shrink you. Let's pause here. Breathe. If this hits home, if you feel like your family only wants the quiet version of you, if you've been made to feel like you're too much, too emotional, too intense, I want you to know you're not too much. You're not crazy. You're just in a teapot where no one's listening. But you don't have to stay there. Let's lift the lid together. Ask yourself, what am I no longer willing to stay silent about? What version of me have I been hiding to keep others comfortable? You can whisper it. You can write it down, but let it out, even if it's just with me right now, because here you are heard. Now let's imagine something different. Let's imagine the dormouse stretching, yawning, blinking its sleepy eyes, but not crawling back into the teapot. Let's imagine the dormouse speaking freely, dreaming out loud, not whispering, not apologizing, just telling the truth. What does that even look like after years, maybe a lifetime of being shut down? Reclaiming your voice isn't a one-time thing. It's a slow waking up, a trembling inhale, a series of shaky steps back towards yourself. And yes, it's scary, especially when you've learned that speaking up risks disconnection. But your truth is not a threat, it's a seed, and your healing, it doesn't require anyone else's permission to grow. Let's start here because this is often the first brave step out of silence. You're allowed to decide what you will and won't tolerate, even from your family, especially from your family. A boundary doesn't have to be aggressive. It can sound like, I'm not comfortable being spoken to that way. If this conversation turns hurtful, I'm going to walk away. I won't stay in spaces where I feel disrespected. Simple, direct, not an invitation to debate, just a line in the sand. And yes, the people who benefit from you staying silent may react badly. That doesn't mean your boundary is wrong. It means it's working. There was a time when I tried to set a boundary with a family member who constantly made passive-aggressive comments about my appearance. I said, please don't comment on how I look unless it's kind. And their response, a sarcastic, oh, I guess I'm not allowed to say anything now. I wanted to backpedal. I almost did, but I stayed firm, and eventually they stopped commenting altogether. Not because they suddenly understood me, but because I stopped allowing access to my vulnerability without respect. The first time you speak up after years of being silent, your voice might tremble, your hands might shake, your throat might close up. That's okay. That's normal. Courage doesn't sound like confidence. It sounds like a whisper that refuses to stay buried. Speaking up might look like telling someone they hurt you even if they don't acknowledge it. Admitting you're still angry about something no one else wants to talk about. Saying, I love you, but I also need distance. It's powerful, even when it's quiet. Even when no one claps or changes or apologizes. When was the last time you told the truth, even when it felt risky? How did your body react? What did your heart need afterward? Now this one, it hurts. Because part of us still hopes deep down that one day they'll finally get it. They'll see how much they hurt you. They'll apologize. They'll say all the things you needed to hear when you were younger. But sometimes they don't. And sometimes they can't. Not because your truth isn't valid, but because they're too attached to the version of their own story. Letting go of that fantasy can feel like grief, but it also sets you free. Because you no longer have to contort yourself, hoping to be understood. You no longer have to earn your family's empathy. You get to tell your truth anyways. Let me say this clearly. Sometimes your healing won't make sense to the people who hurt you. And sometimes your truth will cost you connection, but never your worth. Let that sink in. You do not have to stay small just to keep someone else comfortable. You do not have to stay small just to keep someone else comfortable. You do not have to swallow your pain to avoid rocking the boat. You do not have to remain quiet to be loved. Let's turn that inward now. What do you wish you could say to your family without fear of being dismissed? You don't have to say it to them today, but I invite you to say it to yourself. On paper, in a voice memo, in a note on your phone, whatever feels safe. Write it down, no filter. Let your Dormouse speak. Example starters for listeners who feel stuck. I'm tired of pretending that didn't hurt. I needed more from you, and I still do. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean I forget. This is who I am now, and I'm not hiding anymore. You've been quiet for too long. You've folded yourself up, so small. But the Dormouse is dreaming. Not in silence, but in truth. And maybe for the first time, those dreams aren't just in your head. They're on paper. They're in your voice. They're alive. You deserve to be heard, even if your family never chooses to listen. You deserve to speak, even if it feels scary. You deserve to tell your truth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Because your healing is not too loud. Your truth is not too much. And your voice it's just getting started. Thank you for staying with me on this long, dreamy episode. If you ever felt invisible, if your family only hears what they want to, this was for you. You're not alone. You're not too sensitive. And you're not going back into the teapot. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their voice, or keep it close for the days when you need to remember yours. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and keep unlocking the wonder within.